In 1963, a young Canadian anthropologist named Richard Lee walked into the Kalahari Desert with a notebook and a stopwatch. He was 26 years old. He had come to study a group of hunter-gatherers called the Juhwansi, who had been living in the same scrubland on the border of Botswana and Namibia for somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 years. He expected to find people on the edge of survival, starving, exhausted, working from sunrise to sunset for the small handful of calories the desert would give them. He did not find that. What he found was that adult members of the group spent, on average, about 15 hours a week looking for food. 2 to 3 hours a day. The rest of their time was spent talking, visiting other camps, playing with children, telling stories, sleeping in the shade through the hottest parts of the afternoon. Lee timed them with his stopwatch and counted the calories. The Juhwansi were eating roughly 2,140 calories a day. They were healthier than the European farmers who had displaced their cousins centuries earlier. And they were doing it in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. The average American adult works 44 hours a week, plus another 20 to 30 hours of household chores, childcare, and the unpaid labor of being a modern person. That is conservatively 4 to 5 times what a Stone Age desert forager spent on staying alive. This is the original Affluent Society, and the reason it matters is not the one most people think. The phrase was coined by an anthropologist named Marshall Salins. In 1966, the University of Chicago hosted a conference called Man the Hunter. It was the first time the world's leading hunter-gatherer researchers had ever gathered in one room. Richard Lee was there with his Kalahari data. So was a researcher named John McCarthy, who had spent 2 years living with Aboriginal Australians in Arnhem Land and counted their work hours at almost identical numbers. So was a room full of other anthropologists who had been quietly recording the same pattern, in jungles and deserts and tundras, on every continent for 2 decades. Salins listened to all of them, then stood up and gave a talk that ended a century of assumptions about what prehistoric life was actually like. He called hunter-gatherers the original Affluent Society. He said they were not the desperate, starving primitives the textbooks had described. They were, in his words, the only people in human history who had ever fully solved the problem of want. In 1972, he published the talk as a book. It became one of the most cited works in the history of anthropology. It is also one of the most misread. This is the moment everything began to come apart. To understand what was actually happening, you have to look at what hunter-gatherers ate. The Juhwansi survived on something called the mongongo nut, a fatty, protein-rich nut that grew wild in such abundance across the Kalahari that thousands of tons of it lay rotting on the desert floor every year. They ate roots, melons, tubers. They hunted occasionally, but most of their calories came from gathering, which the women did, and which was reliable in a way that hunting almost never is. The Hadza of Tanzania, studied separately by anthropologists in the 1960s, showed almost the same pattern. So did groups in the Amazon, in the Arctic, in the Australian outback. The work was hard, but it was finite. You went out, you collected what you needed, and you came home. And then you stopped. That last part is the part that gets lost. Most modern people reading about hunter-gatherer leisure assume that the ancient humans simply didn't have the option to work more. That if you handed a Juhwansi forager a better tool, or a richer hunting ground, or a market to trade in, they would have happily worked longer hours and stockpiled the surplus. The data does not support this. When researchers gave the Juhwansi the option to work more, most of them said no. When richer food sources became available, they did not extend their workdays to exploit them. They simply met their target and went home. James Sussman, the British anthropologist who spent nearly 30 years living with the same group Richard Lee had studied, found exactly the same pattern as late as the 2000s. The Ju/Hwansi worked, on average, about 17 hours a week getting food. They worked another 20 hours a week on chores. Total labor, roughly 37 hours. Still less than a modern American, but more importantly, the work had a ceiling. There was a culturally agreed upon number that meant enough. When you hit it, you stopped. This is what Salins meant by affluent. It was not that they had everything, it was that they wanted a finite amount of things and they could reliably get it. And once they got it, the question of whether to acquire more simply did not enter their minds. He called this the Zen road to affluence. Want less. Reach a place where what you have and what you want are the same number. He contrasted it with what he called the galloping road to affluence, the road industrial societies took, where you produce more and want grows faster than supply, forever. He thought we had picked the wrong road. He thought we had picked it 12,000 years ago when we invented farming. And here is the part almost nobody quotes. The popular reading of all of this, the one that gets passed around online, is that the original Affluent Society was a kind of lost paradise. Carefree hippies in loincloths, gambling in the shade, living the 4-hour workweek before Tim Ferriss thought of it. That reading made Salins famous, and it also embarrassed him for the rest of his career. He spent decades trying to clarify what he had actually meant. He did not think hunter-gatherers were happy in the way Westerners imagine happiness. He did not think they were free from violence, illness, grief, or boredom. He thought they had solved exactly one problem, which is the problem of when to stop working. And he thought that problem was the one our entire civilization was now built around not solving. The skeletal record agrees with him. In 1987, the geographer Jared Diamond published an essay called "The Worst Mistake in the History of the Human Race." He drew on bioarchaeological data that had been quietly piling up since the 1960s. When scientists compared the skeletons of hunter-gatherers to the skeletons of the early farmers who replaced them, the farmers were measurably worse off. Hunter-gatherer men in Greece and Turkey had averaged 5 feet 9 inches in height. By 3000 BC, after several thousand years of agriculture, the men averaged 5 feet 3. Women dropped from 5 feet 5 to under 5 feet. Life expectancy fell. Dental disease exploded. New plagues emerged that had not existed in pre-agricultural humans because population density had not been high enough to support them. We did not adopt agriculture because it made us healthier. It did not. We adopted it because it let more of us survive on less land. And once a society had farmers in it, the foragers next door either became farmers themselves or got pushed off the productive land. Agriculture is a population strategy that nobody chose. It chose us. And the workdays got longer, and the workdays kept getting longer. The factory worker of 1880 was putting in 70 to 80 hours a week. The peasant of medieval Europe worked less than that, but more than any hunter-gatherer who has ever been studied. The white-collar worker of 2026, sitting at a desk under a fluorescent light, is in some technical sense the freest of all of them. We are not chained to a plow. We are not starving. We are healthier by most measures than any humans who have ever lived. We have eradicated diseases the Zhuangzi accepted as facts of life, but we have lost the off switch. This is what the data is actually saying. Not that ancient humans were lazy or paradisal or free in some romantic sense. They were not. They had a number that meant enough. They knew when to put down the digging stick. They knew when the workday was over. We do not. The technologies we have built specifically to give us more leisure have, almost without exception, been absorbed into more work. The hours saved by the dishwasher became hours of email. The hours saved by the washing machine became hours of childcare formerly done by extended family. The hours saved by the smartphone became hours of being on call, always, for everyone. The Zhuangzi did not have the option to work less than they did. They had the option to work more and chose not to. The forager who comes back to camp at noon with a full bag of mongongo nuts is not avoiding work. He is finished. He has decided what enough looks like, and he has reached it, and the rest of the day is his. That is the part of the original Affluent Society that the West has never figured out how to copy. Not the leisure, the stopping. The 15-hour work week is sitting there in the data. So are the skeletons. So are the food diaries. So are 60 years of patient anthropologists with stopwatches, recording the same answer in the same desert, decade after decade. The Zhuangzi knew when to stop. We have not learned it yet. The workday never ends because nobody is sure when it should.